In a quiet town in Pennsylvania, the nights were always silent. But behind one abandoned farmhouse, a girl's screams vanished into the darkness, unheard. Emily Carter, a 19-year-old college freshman, had been walking home from the university library when headlights blinded her. A black pickup truck screeched to a halt. Before she could react, a hand smothered her mouth and dragged her inside. Jason Miller, 25, wasn't a stranger in town. People knew his family owned land nearby, but no one knew the darkness he carried. He locked Emily inside the basement of his farmhouse, a place where broken furniture and rusted chains spoke of long-forgotten misery. For days, Jason controlled her life. He fed her when he felt like it, kept her chained when he wanted power, and forced her to listen to his twisted conversations about ownership and belonging. Sometimes he touched her, sometimes he mocked her, always reminding her that she was nothing more than a trapped bird in his cage. Emily's cries echoed in the damp room, but no one came. At first, her body trembled with fear, but slowly a spark began to burn inside her, a thought she held onto in the endless dark. If I survive this, I will destroy him. She started watching him carefully. Every time he unlocked the door, she noted how the key jingled. Every time he poured himself a drink, she remembered how sluggish he became. Jason thought she was broken, but Emily was only bending, waiting for the right moment to snap back. One night, Jason leaned close to her and whispered, "You'll never leave me, Emily. Even if you walk out one day, your mind will stay here forever." That was the moment Emily made her decision. Not only would she escape, she would make sure Jason's world collapsed in the same darkness he created for her. The days blurred together in the suffocating basement. Emily had stopped crying. Tears wasted energy. Instead, she observed. Jason underestimated her, believing fear had consumed every ounce of her spirit. But Emily was studying him. Jason drank heavily at night, leaving empty beer bottles scattered across the floor. When he stumbled to bed, the keys to her chains dangled, carelessly from his belt. He had routines, locking her in the evening, checking in during the morning, and sometimes forcing her to sit across from him at dinner as if they were a couple. His delusions sickened her, but they gave her patterns to exploit. Emily found a weapon too. One afternoon, when Jason dragged her upstairs to remind her who was in control, she noticed a picture frame on the wall cracked at the corner. Later, back in the basement, she hid a shard of glass inside her mattress. It wasn't much, but to her it was the beginning of power. Her heart pounded each time she touched it. The shard was sharp enough to cut through rope, maybe even skin. She began rehearsing. When Jason unlocked the door, she listened to the clink of the key, timing his movements in her head. 3 seconds to push, 2 seconds to strike, 1 second to run. Over and over, she planned. Jason, meanwhile, had no idea the girl he believed was broken was sharpening her mind into a blade. One night, Jason came to her drunker than usual. He slurred, "You're mine, Emily. You'll thank me one day for making you stronger." He leaned so close she could feel his breath. Emily didn't flinch this time. She looked him in the eyes and whispered, "Maybe you're right. Maybe I am stronger." Jason laughed, mistaking her defiance for desperation. But inside, Emily knew the game had shifted. The next morning, when Jason slept upstairs, she pulled the shard of glass from the mattress. Slowly, carefully, she began sawing at the rope that bound her wrists. The fibers tore apart strand by strand. Every snap of the rope was a victory. Every drop of blood from her raw skin was a promise. By the time Jason woke, Emily's hands were freer than he realized. She hid the evidence, waiting. Her plan wasn't just escape anymore. Escape meant survival. Revenge meant justice. And Emily wasn't leaving until Jason felt what it meant to be powerless. She stared at the locked door that separated her from him, her pulse steady now. Soon she would walk out of this farmhouse on her own terms. And Jason? Jason would never walk out again. Jason woke groggy, his hangover pounding like a drum. He staggered down the basement stairs with a half-empty bottle in hand. To him, it was another morning of control. To Emily, it was the day everything began to shift. She sat quietly, rope draped loosely around her wrists. Jason didn't notice. He tossed her a piece of stale bread and muttered something about being grateful. Emily forced herself to lower her eyes, masking the fire inside her. But inside, she counted her breaths. She had practiced this moment, in her head hundreds of times. When Jason leaned closer to fasten the chain, Emily's fingers brushed the shard of glass hidden under her sleeve. One cut, one strike. Her mind repeated it like a mantra. But not yet. Not until she could guarantee success. She needed him weaker, more careless, more convinced she was helpless. So she played along. She ate when he demanded, nodded when he spoke, even pretended to flinch at his words. And Jason, arrogant and blind, believed he had broken her spirit. Days passed, and Emily's wrists were free whenever she chose, though Jason never realized. She used the time to strengthen herself, stretching, moving, regaining the muscles he thought captivity had stolen. Every hidden push-up, every step taken in silence prepared her for the day she would strike. One evening, Jason dragged her upstairs, insisting she sit across from him at the dinner table. His drunk eyes glistened with a twisted pride. "You look almost normal tonight," he slurred. "Maybe you're starting to accept that this is where you belong." Emily lifted her gaze and, for the first time, allowed a faint smile to cross her lips. "Maybe," she whispered. That smile wasn't surrender. It was war paint. And Jason never recognized it. The next morning, Emily tested her first move. As Jason snored upstairs, she quietly slipped free of her bindings and tiptoed to the door. The lock clicked louder than she expected, and her heart nearly stopped. But he didn't stir. She opened the door just wide enough to peek out. The hallway stretched ahead, cluttered with boxes and old tools. A hammer rested on top of a crate. Emily's hand trembled as she picked it up, the weight both foreign and empowering. She tucked it under her shirt and crept back inside, refastening the rope around her wrists before Jason could wake. That night, when he returned, she hid the hammer beneath her thin blanket. She listened to his footsteps, memorized the rhythm of his drunken sway, and rehearsed how the metal would feel in her grip. Emily no longer felt like prey. She was the hunter, waiting for the moment her trap would snap shut. Jason thought tomorrow would be like every other day. But tomorrow, the basement would stop being his kingdom. It would become his grave. The farmhouse was silent, except for the creak of floorboards above. Jason was awake, pacing. Emily could hear his footsteps moving, back and forth, heavy and restless. He had drunk too much again. She could tell by the irregular rhythm of his steps. Tonight, she decided, it would end. Her fingers wrapped tightly around the hammer hidden beneath her blanket. Her pulse was steady, her breathing calm. She had been powerless for too long. Now, she was ready to reclaim herself. The basement door swung open. Jason staggered in, his face flushed from alcohol, keys dangling at his side. "You thought you could outlast me, didn't you?" He sneered. "But you'll always belong here." Emily lowered her eyes, feigning submission. She let him step closer. His hand reached toward her wrist. That was the moment. With a sudden burst of strength, Emily tore free of the loose rope and swung the hammer upward. The first strike landed against his arm, the crack echoing through the basement. Jason screamed, stumbling backward. Emily rose to her feet, years of fear collapsing into raw fury. She swung again, this time grazing his shoulder, driving him against the wall. "You don't own me," she shouted, her voice trembling with rage. Jason tried to lunge at her, but the alcohol slowed him. His hand clawed toward her throat, until Emily drove the hammer down once more, this time with all the strength she had left. Jason collapsed to the ground, dazed and bleeding. Emily could have run. The door was wide open. Freedom was only steps away. But when she looked at Jason writhing on the floor, she knew escape wasn't enough. Survival had never been her goal. Revenge was. She grabbed the keys from his belt, unlocked the basement fully, and dragged him down the stairs he once forced her to descend. Chains clattered against the wall, the same chains that had held her. Now she fastened them around his wrists, his ankles, his neck. Jason cursed and begged, but Emily's silence was colder than his pleas. "You said I'd never leave you," she whispered. "You were right. I'll stay, just long enough to watch you suffer." For hours, she left him chained in the dark, his cries echoing the same way hers once had. Every scream was a mirror of what he had inflicted on her. By dawn, Emily walked out of the farmhouse. She didn't look back. The keys, still warm in her hand, clinked softly like a victory bell. Jason's voice faded behind her, swallowed by the silence of the Pennsylvania fields. For the first time in weeks, Emily breathed free air. She had survived. She had avenged. And the world beyond the farmhouse finally belonged to her again. If you enjoyed this dark USA-based revenge story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling and emotional tales. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next viral story.